Over the last couple of years of various lockdowns, lack of social interaction, etc., I'm not ashamed to say I have begun climbing the walls. But rather than slipping slowly into madness alone, I thought I'd bring you all along for the ride and share the 5 games that made me. So I've done a couple of these videos before, but this is actually the one I first started writing. A long time ago, probably about a year ago, I began thinking about how I was going to structure this video. There's something about it that has just kept stopping me in my tracks, and I've kind of gone, I don't really want to play the game just now, I want to take some time, etc. But I think it's actually because this video makes me quite nervous to make, because it's going to be a little bit gushy, because this is, for me personally, the best game I've ever played, and it's the game that just, stays with me, makes me feel very protective, and I will fight anyone who tells me it's not as good as I personally think it is. We all have one game like that, I feel, maybe 2, that we just personally love for our own reasons. So, like I say, there are some games that just stay with us. You'll wake up in the middle of the night and your mind is just drawn back to the experience. Some of the best experiences I've personally had have been with games. They've also been some of the most impactful, just like watching a certain movie or reading a certain book, listening to a certain record, just stays with you. So over the last year, I've been sharing insights into a few of the games that have stayed with me. You may have watched my video about walking simulators or the Mass Effect series. These are very similar, and these are the games that have kind of shaped my understanding of games from a personal experience. Now, they're not necessarily because I loved them and they are the best games ever made, but because of the resounding effect they've had on my very short existence. Be warned, like I say, this is not a review of the game, so there will be spoilers throughout. So here we go. We're starting the big one. And this is the game that, no exaggeration, made me a gamer. Yeah, big time. And it's a good one, I promise. It's Naughty Dog's The Last of Us. Buckle up, people. This is a bizarre and bumpy ride that includes major surgery. No, not her, me. Disclosure, I am going to try really hard not to gush too much about this game, but as you may have guessed, I really love this game, so apologies if this becomes a bit of a love letter. Now, my brother was the one who actually bullied me into doing this, and who also introduced me to gaming. So this is dedicated to him, and I thank him, although my bank balance very much does not. Now, I didn't play The Last of Us when it first came out in 2013. I would have been around 14 then, and that would have probably not been okay. Seriously, I'm not one of those people who overly listens to age ratings, and I was no wilting flower as a kid, but this game has themes that still mess me up even now. In fact, I remember my brother playing this on PS3 when it first launched and just saying to me, "No, we're not playing this together," and instead we blitzed Mass Effect 2. I was also quite an argumentative kid, so I clearly knew there was something about this game that was different, as apparently I didn't even argue with him when he said we couldn't play it. But anyway, we move on to the sweet, sweet winter of 2016. 2 years prior, I had been diagnosed with a heart condition and had just spent a few days in hospital for corrective surgery. My mother, in her glorious wisdom, decided my 2 weeks convalescing post-surgery should take place somewhere calming and restorative. So she sent me to my brother's, and we spent the next 7 days staying up till 3 a.m. and scaring ourselves shitless. We even included 3 near-death experiences in that time. With my inability to move very much, we decided to play a video game. In a strange, stars-aligned moment, we landed on The Last of Us. Partly because my brother has never finished it, and partly because it meant we didn't have to wait for anything to download, as it was already on his PlayStation 4. Now, this was a really weird time for me. Quite fairly, learning I had a heart condition, which does have a substantial mortality risk, freaked me out. I was having to contend with new thoughts and possibilities that most of my peers did not. Now sure, I was no stranger to death, but beloved family pets aside, it was a fairly foreign concept to me, and certainly not something I thought I would be experiencing at a young age. So whilst contending with my own mortality and subsequently having had surgery to fix the problem, I came across a game that is all about difficult subjects, mortality and morality. Although you play the game predominantly as Joel, I found myself drawn to the figure of Ellie, who is suddenly finding herself face to face with the real world. Now granted, her world and mine was somewhat different back then, slightly less now, but there were definite connections to what she was going through and my own experience. We were both figuring out who we were whilst also facing up to some medical truths, and also that the world wasn't a perfect place. Now, I had gamed before, but this was a whole new kind of deal for me. This game was top tier, and every aspect from dialogue to narrative to music just blew me away. Although the game wasn't particularly long, it was the first time I had appreciated just what games could do to you, you know? The very fact that you're controlling Joel and Ellie as they have to do some pretty bad things makes the whole thing way more impactful than if you were just watching a movie. The scene in the diner where you play as Ellie gave me actual stomach ache from anxiety, and I actually had to leave the room for a period of time whilst my brother completed that section and then came back when the cutscene started, because I just couldn't deal with it anymore because I was so invested. So the thing I want to touch on first is the morality of this game. Oh boy. Now, a few people have written some really interesting stuff on this, so I'm not going to steal their thunder, but it is a big part of why I love this game. It's plain to say that Joel is not a good guy. Seriously, the first chapter of the game sees you directly as he takes on another smuggler who's pissed him off. The winter chapter involves him using some pretty nasty tactics to find out where Ellie is, including kneecapping a guy at one point. And finally, you have the surgery scene. Now, this is an interesting moment where the player basically becomes Joel fully. Most people on a first run through will storm into that room and just shoot the surgeons without a second thought, because this is Ellie we're talking about, and they're not going to kill her after the hell we've been through, cure or no cure. Now afterwards, you can make the argument that resources are scarce and the only cure being in the hand of terrorists may have not been a good idea, but in the heat of that moment, you do what you do not for any of those reasons, but because of the importance of Ellie and the desensitizing journey you have gone on to get her to this point. This is one of the reasons why I love this game, and it just, nowadays that I'm a bit older and wiser, there's something that still keeps me coming back. The day I bought my own PlayStation 4, I downloaded this game immediately, and I replay it on average about every 6 months. Every time I find myself with a new focus or realisation, and I actually found it comforting to play it at the start of the pandemic because there's a level of resilience and hope I find in it. Not just because of Joel and Ellie making it through and the former saving the latter, or arguably vice versa at the end, but because the whole way through there are good people surviving. And not just surviving, as Tommy would say, but living. So I've really enjoyed replaying this game to help make this video because, like I say, there's just elements to it that are beautiful. I think the soundtrack is one of the most haunting things in the world, and I occasionally listen to it when I need like a gut punch. And of course, very soon we're going to be seeing a TV version of this game, which I'm very nervous about. So Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin, I beg you not to screw with my dreams.